Tom opened his eyes to a sharp pain in his head and the strange sound of humming air. His body was heavy, and for a few seconds he could not remember where he was. The last thing he recalled was being inside a cargo ship, traveling through the outer rim of known space, carrying spare parts and supplies. Now he was lying on soft soil, surrounded by towering trees that glowed faintly in the dark. He pushed himself up and rubbed his temples. His vision cleared, and what he saw took his breath away. The forest around him was alive with color. The leaves of the giant trees shimmered with silver light. Strange flowers pulsed like small lanterns, and vines glowed with a deep green shine. Small creatures darted between the branches, their wings leaving trails of light. Tom looked up. The sky above was not like Earth's. 2 moons hung in the heavens, casting pale light on the land. He realized he was not just on another planet, but on one that felt alive in every sense. His ship must have crashed. He searched his memory, and pieces came back. The alarms had gone off. The hull had cracked. The engine had overheated. Then everything had gone dark. His chest tightened. Were there other survivors? He was part of a small crew, and the thought of being the only one alive filled him with dread. He stood up slowly and brushed dirt off his jacket. A deep scar on the ground showed where a burning object had slid through the forest. That must have been the wreck of the cargo ship. Tom followed the trail of broken trees and scorched soil. After walking for several minutes, he came across the remains of the ship. The metal frame was twisted and glowing from heat. Smoke rose into the air, and parts of the ship still hissed as they cooled. He searched quickly, calling out names of his crewmates. His voice echoed in the strange forest, but no one answered. He climbed into what was left of the ship's main chamber. The control panel was shattered. Sparks flashed from broken wires. Supplies were scattered across the floor. He searched every corner but found no sign of life. The seats were empty and the escape pods were gone. His heart sank. Perhaps the others had managed to leave before the crash, or perhaps they were lost somewhere else on this alien world. As he stood in the ruins, a strange sound reached his ears. It was not the hum of the forest, but something heavier. A rhythm of steps, strong and powerful, echoed through the air. He turned and saw shadows moving between the trees. Tom's body stiffened. He grabbed a broken piece of metal pipe from the wreck, holding it like a weapon. The steps grew louder. The glowing plants seemed to bend away as a group of figures emerged from the forest. They were tall, far taller than any human. Their bodies were covered in dark armor that shimmered under the twin moons. Each figure carried a long spear that hummed with energy. Tom stepped back, his heart racing. The figures surrounded him in a wide circle. He tried to stand tall, but compared to them, he looked small and fragile. The tallest of them stepped forward, removing her helmet. What Tom saw made him freeze. The figure was a woman, but unlike any human woman. She stood over 10 feet tall, her skin smooth and silver like polished metal. Her eyes glowed with a soft green light, and her long hair flowed like strands of crystal. Her face was sharp yet regal, and her presence filled the air with power. She looked at him carefully and then spoke in a deep voice that carried authority. "Human, you are the one." Tom's grip on the pipe tightened. "Who are you?" His voice shook, but he tried not to show fear. The towering woman lowered her spear and placed it on the ground. The others followed her lead. She stepped closer, and Tom had to tilt his head far back just to meet her eyes. "I am Queen Alira," she said, "ruler of the Kailari. You are the chosen mate." Tom blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "Chosen mate? I think you have the wrong person. I am just a mechanic from Earth." The Queen's glowing eyes never left his. "The stars do not lie. Our prophecy spoke of an outsider who would come in fire, one who would stand at my side and lead our people. You came from the sky in flames. You are that one." Tom's chest grew tight. He wanted to laugh at the idea, but there was nothing humorous in the way she spoke. Her tone was absolute. Her people looked at him with both curiosity and suspicion. They muttered in their deep voices, and some of them did not seem pleased by the Queen's declaration. He shook his head. "Listen, I'm not a warrior or a leader. I fix machines. That's it. You need someone else." Queen Alira leaned closer, her shadow covering him. Though her face was calm, there was strength in her eyes that silenced his protest. "You may not see it yet, but fate has chosen you. You will come with us." Before Tom could argue, 2 of the armored Kailari stepped forward. They did not touch him, but their towering forms left him no choice. He looked at the burning wreck of his ship one last time, then at the path ahead. With a heavy heart, he followed them. The group moved quickly through the glowing forest. Tom struggled to keep pace with their long strides. The air grew cooler as they left the wreck behind. Strange creatures watched them from the branches, their glowing eyes blinking in the shadows. The path curved upward, and soon Tom saw a light ahead. When they stepped out of the forest, his jaw dropped. In the distance rose a city unlike anything he had seen. Towers of crystal stretched into the sky, reflecting the light of the moons. Bridges floated in the air, connecting platforms that hung without support. Streams of glowing energy flowed between the towers, and ships of silver drifted through the sky. Tom stopped in awe. "This is incredible," Queen Elira's deep voice answered. "This is Kaelarian, heart of our people, and it will be your home now." Tom felt his stomach twist. Home? He had not agreed to anything. Yet the queen spoke as if his path had already been decided. As they approached the gates of the city, more of her people gathered. They stared at him with wide eyes, pointing and whispering. Some bowed to their queen, while others frowned at the sight of a small human walking among them. Tom could feel the weight of their gaze. He was an outsider, a stranger, and yet their queen had declared him something far more. His mind spun with questions. Why him? What prophecy was this? And what did she mean by chosen mate? The gates opened, and the group entered the shining city. Tom's heart pounded. He was surrounded by giants drawn into a destiny he did not understand. Tom walked through the shining gates of the alien city, his eyes wide as he tried to take in everything around him. The streets were made of polished stone that glowed faintly with blue lines running through them, as if the ground itself carried energy. The air was filled with the hum of machines he did not recognize, and strange birds with wings like glass soared between tall towers. The Kalari people stood on the sides of the streets, their tall figures watching silently as the queen led Tom forward. Some bowed when the queen passed, but many stared at Tom with confusion. Their glowing green eyes followed him, and he could hear low voices whispering in a language he could not understand. Tom felt small among them. Their average height was around 9 feet, and they carried themselves with natural strength and elegance. He tried to walk with confidence, but the stares made his skin tighten. He wanted to ask questions, but he stayed quiet. The queen's presence beside him kept him from speaking out. Her stride was long, steady, and commanding, and the air around her seemed heavy with authority. At last, they entered a vast hall built inside one of the tallest towers. The ceiling stretched so high Tom could barely see the top. The walls glowed with moving patterns of light, forming shifting symbols. At the end of the hall stood a raised platform with a throne carved from crystal. The queen climbed the steps and turned to face her people. Her voice rang across the chamber, deep and commanding. "My people, the prophecy is fulfilled. The one who fell from the sky has come to us in fire. He is the chosen mate, the one destined to stand at my side and guide our people to peace." A wave of voices filled the hall. Some Kalari cheered, their voices echoing like drums. Others muttered in disapproval. One council member, an older Kalari with silver hair braided behind his head, stepped forward and raised his hand. His armor shone and his eyes were sharp with doubt. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing with respect, "the prophecy speaks of an outsider, yes. But how can this small human be the one? Look at him. He is fragile. He carries no power, no weapon, no strength. To call him your mate is to insult our traditions." Tom felt his face grow hot. He wanted to defend himself but held back. He had no idea what to say in a room filled with towering aliens. The queen's gaze hardened. "Counselor Varen, do you doubt the word of the prophecy? Do you doubt me?" Varen bowed his head, but his voice was firm. "I do not doubt you, my queen. I doubt only that this human can fulfill such a role. If he is to be your chosen mate, he must prove himself worthy." The crowd murmured in agreement. Some shouted approval, others argued. The sound grew louder until the queen raised her hand and silence fell at once. She looked down at Tom, her glowing eyes calm yet powerful. "You hear their doubts. They question you. Do you wish to answer them, human?" Tom's throat was dry, but he forced himself to speak. "I never asked for this. I don't know anything about prophecies. But I do know this. I survived a crash that should have killed me. I've fixed machines most people thought were impossible. I don't know why your prophecy points to me, but if you give me a chance, maybe I can prove I am more than what I look like." The queen's lips curved into a small smile. She turned to her people. "He will prove himself. He will face the trials of trust. If he succeeds, his place at my side will be undeniable. If he fails, then I will hear the counsel of the people. The hall filled with voices again, but this time many agreed. The Queen had spoken, and her word carried the weight of law. Tom swallowed hard. Trials of trust. The word sounded heavy. He was just a mechanic. He fixed broken engines and patched holes in metal walls. He had never faced trials of any kind. Yet he could not back down. Not in front of the Queen, and not in front of the thousands of eyes watching him. The Queen stepped down from her throne and stood beside him. Her towering form made him feel like a child. She placed her hand on his shoulder. Though her hand was large, her touch was gentle. "Do not fear. You will not be alone in this. I will guide you." Her words gave him a strange comfort. That night, Tom was given a chamber inside the palace. It was vast compared to what he was used to, with walls that shimmered like living stone and windows that looked out over the glowing city. Servants brought him food, fruits that glowed softly and meats cooked over crystal flames. He tasted them carefully, surprised by the rich flavors. When he lay down on the soft bed, he stared out at the city lights. His mind spun with everything that had happened. He was no longer a mechanic on a simple job. He was in a world of giants, bound by a prophecy he did not understand, claimed by a queen who seemed both fierce and kind. He wondered if he would ever see Earth again. A part of him missed home, but another part felt drawn to this strange world. The next morning, he was led to a courtyard where the trials would begin. The Kalari gathered in great numbers, filling the stands around the field. At the center stood the Queen, her tall form shining in the morning light. She raised her hand and addressed the people. "Today the human will face the trials of trust. He will show us if the stars chose wisely. Watch and judge." Tom's heart raced. He tried to steady his breath as he stepped onto the field. 3 great tasks awaited him, each meant to test his strength, his skill, and his courage. The first trial was survival. He was taken into the jungle outside the city, and left with nothing but his wits. Strange beasts roamed the trees, their roars shaking the ground. The Kalari guards followed from a distance to observe, but they offered no help. Tom used his knowledge as a mechanic to build simple tools from what he found. He crafted sharp edges from stones, ropes from vines, and used pieces of metal left from his crashed ship. He built a small fire and scared away the glowing beasts that circled him at night. Though he struggled, he survived 3 days alone in the wild. The second trial was skill. The Kalari gave him broken machines, ancient war devices that no one had managed to repair for centuries. Tom examined the strange engines, their parts humming with energy. He worked day and night, his hands covered in grease, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. But slowly he began to understand their design. He combined his human knowledge with what he had learned of their technology. By the end of the trial, the machines roared to life, their glowing cores spinning once again. The Kalari gasped in awe. The third trial was courage. Tom was placed in an arena with a great beast, a creature twice the size of an elephant with armored skin and burning eyes. The crowd roared as the gates opened and the beast charged. Tom's legs shook, but he refused to run. He grabbed a spear thrown to him and stood his ground. At the last moment, he dodged to the side, rolling on the ground. He used his knowledge to spot weak points in the beast's armor, striking where the plates were thin. It was a desperate fight, but with clever moves and quick thinking, he brought the beast down. The crowd exploded with cheers. Queen Alira stepped forward, her green eyes glowing with pride. "You have seen him. He has faced the trials and triumphed. No longer can you doubt him. He is my chosen mate." Tom stood in the center of the arena, breathing heavily, sweat dripping from his face. The cheers filled his ears, and for the first time, he felt that maybe he truly belonged here. The sun of Kaelarian rose over the crystal towers, casting long rays of golden light across the city. Tom stood at the balcony of his chamber, his body sore from the trials he had faced. His arms still ached from the fight with the beast, and his clothes were torn from the jungle days. Yet he felt something he had not expected: pride. He had survived when the council had doubted him. He had shown the people that he was more than a weak outsider. Still, doubt lingered inside him. He was no warrior. He was not born to lead a people or stand at the side of a queen. He was just Tom, a mechanic from Earth. A knock echoed against the chamber door. When Tom turned, he saw Queen Alira step inside. She wore no armor today. Instead, she was dressed in a long robe made of shining silver fabric that moved like flowing water. Her green eyes rested on him with calm strength. "You survived the trials," she said in her deep voice. You have silenced many doubts. Tom gave a weak smile. I survived, yes. But I am not sure I silenced my own doubts. The Queen stepped closer, her towering presence filling the room. She looked down at him, her face softer than before. Doubt is the weight of responsibility. Only those who care for others feel it. The ones without doubt are dangerous, for they believe themselves perfect. Tom thought about her words. He had never considered doubt as something valuable. To him, doubt had always been weakness. Yet hearing it from her made it feel different. She turned and gestured for him to follow. Walk with me. There is more you must learn. They walked together through the palace halls. Guards bowed as the Queen passed, but their eyes often lingered on Tom. Some showed respect, others suspicion. He ignored the whispers and kept pace with Alira. The palace gardens stretched before them, filled with plants that glowed faintly and streams that sparkled like liquid glass. Strange birds sang from the branches, their voices carrying clear notes that echoed across the stones. Alira stopped by a pool of still water. Her reflection shimmered on the surface as she spoke. Do you know why our people believe in the prophecy of the outsider? Tom shook his head. No. I don't understand why someone like me would matter so much. The Queen's gaze grew distant. Long ago, before I was born, our people were divided. Clans fought against each other. No one could unite them. But a vision came to the seers, a vision of fire in the sky. An outsider would arrive, not of our blood, yet chosen by the stars. That outsider would stand with our ruler and bring unity to the Kailari. Many believed it was only a story. Yet the seers passed it down for generations. She turned her eyes back to him. When you fell from the sky in fire, I knew the time had come. Tom stared at the pool. The thought of being part of some ancient vision unsettled him. And if the prophecy is wrong? What if I fail you? What if I fail your people? Alira stepped closer, her shadow covering him. Then I will bear that failure with you. But I believe the stars do not lie. For a moment, silence filled the garden. Tom felt the weight of her words. The queen of an entire people was placing her trust in him. It was overwhelming, but also strangely comforting. That day, Tom was introduced to the council chamber, where the Kailari leaders gathered to plan the defense of their world. The rival empire, the Vaynar, had begun to stir again. Scouts reported movement along the borders. The council spoke in heavy voices, arguing over strategies. When Tom entered, many of them grew silent. Counselor Varen, the same elder who had doubted him before, spoke sharply. Why is the human here? He may have survived the trials, but this is no place for him. We face war, not broken machines. Alira raised her hand. He has proven his mind is sharp. His skills with machines brought back weapons that even our best engineers could not restore. He will hear our plans, and he will speak when he has insight. Varen frowned, but he said no more. Tom listened as they described the enemy. The Vaynar were ruthless, their ships vast and their weapons deadly. They had pushed the Kailari back in the past, and only the strong defenses of Kailarian kept them safe. The council planned to strengthen the walls and ready their fleets. As Tom studied the maps and the glowing figures that showed troop movements, something caught his eye. You are placing too many forces near the north wall, he said carefully. If the enemy attacks from the east, you will not be able to move soldiers fast enough. The council turned to him in surprise. Varen narrowed his eyes. And what do you know of war, human? Tom kept his voice steady. I don't know war, but I know systems, machines. When one part takes all the load, it breaks. You have to balance the strain. Your defenses are like a machine. If you put all the weight on one side, the other side will fail. The Queen looked at him with interest. He is right. Balance is the heart of survival, the council murmured. Some nodded in agreement. Even Varen gave a reluctant nod, though his expression remained hard. After the meeting, Alira walked with Tom through the halls. You see, Tom, you have a way of looking at things that we do not. That is why you matter. You bring something new. Tom gave a quiet laugh. I only said what seemed obvious. Her green eyes softened. What is obvious to you is not always obvious to others. That is your gift. Days passed, and Tom began to spend more time among the Kailari. He worked with their engineers, learning their machines and teaching them tricks from Earth. He showed them how to repair parts with simple methods, how to reuse broken pieces, how to keep systems running longer. The Kailari were amazed at his creativity, for they often relied only on tradition. At the same time, he trained with their warriors. Though he was smaller, He learned to move quickly and to use speed where strength failed him. The queen often watched him from the side, her presence steady and inspiring. Slowly, the people's view of him began to change. Children of the Kelari followed him with curiosity. Warriors clapped his shoulder in respect. Even some who had doubted him began to see his value. One evening, as the sun set behind the towers, Tom and Alira stood on the high balcony of the palace. The city glowed below them, alive with light. Tom leaned on the railing. "I never thought my life would turn this way. Back on Earth, I was nobody. Just another worker fixing broken things. Now I'm standing in a palace with a queen, preparing for a war I barely understand." Alira's gaze was fixed on the horizon. "You are no longer nobody. You are part of something greater. And you are not alone." Her words warmed him more than he expected. For the first time since the crash, he felt less like a stranger. But as the night deepened, he could not ignore the truth. War was coming, and soon he would have to prove not only his skill but his courage, on a battlefield where the fate of an entire people rested on his shoulders. The days of calm in Kelarian did not last. Tension spread through the city like a shadow. Messengers brought news from the borderlands. The Vanar were moving. Their ships had crossed the outer skies, and their armies were gathering on the plains beyond the Kelari Mountains. Tom stood in the council chamber as the reports were read. The glowing map in the center of the hall showed bright red lines pushing closer and closer to Kelarian. The councilors' voices were heavy with concern. "The Vanar come with great force," one said. "If they strike the outer walls, we may not hold." Another added, "Our fleets are not ready. We need more time." Queen Alira's voice cut through the chamber with calm authority. "Time is not given. We must make ready now." Her eyes turned to Tom. "And we must use every mind and every hand, even those not born of our world." Tom swallowed hard as the eyes of the council turned toward him. He felt the weight of their expectations pressing against him like a storm. He was not a general. He had never led soldiers in war, yet he could not step back now. That night he walked with Alira through the high walls of the city. From above he could see the glowing lights of the towers and the faint shimmer of the shields that surrounded Kelarian. In the far distance, smoke rose from the horizon. Alira's voice was steady. "The Vanar do not seek only conquest. They wish to break our spirit. They will strike hard and without mercy. If we fall, they will take all that we are." Tom nodded slowly. "Then we cannot fight them the way they expect. If we only stand on defense, they will crush us. We need to think differently." The queen tilted her head. "What do you see, Tom?" Tom leaned on the wall, thinking of machines, of systems. "The Vanar are strong, yes, but strength can be used against itself. They are large, heavy, slow. They expect us to meet them head on. If we spread them thin, if we make them chase, their power becomes weakness. We can use speed and surprise." Alira's lips curved slightly. "You speak as if war is another machine you are trying to repair." Tom gave a small laugh. "Maybe it is. Every system has a weak point. You just need to find it." The queen's green eyes glowed softly in the moonlight. "Then we shall follow your plan. Tomorrow you will speak to the generals." The next day, Tom stood in the war hall before the Kelari commanders. The room was filled with tall figures in heavy armor, their faces sharp with focus. He explained his idea. Instead of pouring all their forces into one wall, they would divide into smaller groups, striking fast and moving constantly. The great machines he had repaired would be the core of their defense, but they would not stay in one place. They would shift across the field, forcing the Vanar to break their lines. At first, some commanders resisted. "This is not our way," one argued. "We fight with honor, not tricks," Tom answered with firm words. "If you want to win, you cannot fight the way the enemy expects. Honor is not lost when you survive to protect your people. Honor is lost when you fall because you were too proud to change." His words rang through the chamber. Even those who doubted him before began to nod. Queen Alira stood beside him, her presence giving weight to his voice. Preparations began at once. Warriors trained in new formations. Engineers adjusted the machines Tom had restored, adding new systems he suggested. He worked day and night, covered in grease and sweat, guiding both the Kelari and their tools. Though he was exhausted, he felt alive with purpose. At last, the day came. The sky burned with red light as Vanar ships darkened the horizon. Their massive forms blotted out the suns, and the ground shook under the march of their armies. Tom stood on the high wall beside Queen Alira. She wore full armor, silver plates that shone like fire and carried a great spear that pulsed with energy. She was taller and more fearsome than ever, yet her calm voice carried strength to those below. "My people," she shouted, her voice rolling like thunder. "The Vaynar come to break us, but we will not break. We stand together with courage, with unity, with the strength of Calarian, and at my side stands the one chosen by the stars, who has shown us new paths. We will fight, and we will endure." The Kalari warriors raised their spears and shouted in one voice. The sound shook the city. The Vaynar struck like a storm. Their weapons blasted against the shields of Calarian, shaking the towers. Their armies charged, tall figures covered in black armor, their faces hidden behind cruel masks. Tom's heart pounded as he stood inside one of the machines he had repaired. It was a war walker, a giant machine with legs like a beast and arms that carried glowing cannons. He sat in the pilot's seat, his hands gripping the controls. He had learned quickly, though not perfectly. This was no simple repair. This was war. "Ready," he whispered to himself. The gates opened and the Kalari poured out to meet the enemy. The air filled with the clash of weapons, the roar of machines, the cries of warriors. Tom's warwalker moved forward, its heavy legs thundering on the ground. He fired the cannons, sending blasts of light into the enemy ranks. Vaynar soldiers scattered, their lines breaking. "Shift left," Tom shouted to the nearby warriors. "Do not let them surround you." The Kalari obeyed, moving with speed they had never used before. They struck hard, then pulled back, then struck again. The Vaynar, large and heavy, struggled to keep up. Their formations broke and their power began to turn against them. On the battlefield, Queen Alira fought with unmatched fury. Her spear cut through the enemy lines, her tall figure a beacon for her people. Wherever she moved, the Kalari fought harder. Tom kept his machine close to her side, covering her with cannon fire as she struck with her weapon. The battle raged for hours. Smoke and fire filled the field. Tom's arms ached from the controls, his eyes burned with sweat, but he did not stop. He shouted commands, guided formations, and used every bit of knowledge he had to keep the Kalari one step ahead. At last, the tide turned. The Vaynar, unable to hold their lines, began to retreat. The Kalari shouted in triumph as the enemy pulled back across the plains. When the dust settled, the field was quiet. The Kalari had held. The city stood. Tom climbed out of his machine, his body trembling with exhaustion. The queen approached him, her armor scorched, her spear still glowing. She looked down at him, and for a moment her fierce face softened. "You fought with courage," she said. "You fought as one of us." Tom took a shaky breath. "I only did what I could. But you were the heart of the fight. Without you, they would not have held." Alira placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch heavy yet warm. "Without you, we would not have seen the path to victory. Today you showed my people that even the smallest one can carry the strength of giants." The Kalari gathered around, raising their voices in one great cheer. For the first time, Tom felt not like a stranger, but like part of their world. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. The Vaynar had been pushed back, but they would return. And when they did, the true test of his place among the Kalari would come. The sky over Calarian was calm after the storm of battle. Smoke still rose from the distant plains where the Vaynar had retreated, but the city itself glowed softly under the twin moons. Tom stood on the palace balcony, leaning against the rail and feeling the cool night air on his face. His body ached from the long battle, but his mind was restless. The taste of victory was sweet, yet it was mixed with the knowledge that the war was not over. Queen Alira joined him, her armor polished again after repairs, her green eyes reflecting the city lights. She did not speak at first, only stood beside him, towering and serene. Tom had grown accustomed to her presence, but even now, he felt the weight of it, the strength, the power, and the expectation that came with being chosen by a queen. "You are awake early," she said finally, her voice calm and steady. Tom looked at her, letting out a slow breath. "I cannot sleep. There is too much to think about. We won today, but they will return. I keep imagining what could happen next." Alira nodded. "That is wise. To rest too long is dangerous. To fear too much is dangerous as well. Balance is what you must find." Tom glanced at the city below. The towers shimmered, the streets hummed with life, and the people moved with cautious hope. "I never thought I would be here," he admitted. "I am just a mechanic. I never dreamed I would fight in wars, guide armies, or even stand beside a queen." Alira's eyes softened. "It is not about what you thought you would be. It is about what you chose to become. Every choice you make shapes the future. Today you chose to stand and fight. That choice changed everything. Tom felt a warmth in her words. For months he had felt like an outsider, unsure of his place, uncertain of whether he belonged. Now standing with her, he realized he had found not only a purpose but a home. Days passed as Calarian rebuilt. The city repaired the damaged walls, tended to the wounded, and reforged broken machines. Tom worked alongside the engineers and soldiers, sharing ideas, teaching, and learning. He became more than a visitor. He became a part of the Kalari people. Queen Alira often observed him, sometimes silently, sometimes offering advice. She taught him how to understand her people, how to anticipate the needs of leaders, and how to see beyond what the eye could show. Tom began to understand the depth of her responsibility, the loneliness of a ruler, and the strength required to protect an entire world. One evening, after a long day of planning defenses, Alira asked Tom to walk with her through the palace gardens. The glowing plants and sparkling streams reflected the soft light of the moons, creating a quiet sanctuary in the heart of the city. "You have changed, Tom," she said, her voice thoughtful. "When you first arrived, you doubted yourself. You believed you were too small, too weak, too ordinary. Yet now you have proven yourself in ways I never imagined." Tom shook his head. "I still feel small. I still worry that one day I might fail. I am not like you, Alira. I do not have your strength, your presence, or your authority." Alira smiled faintly, placing her hand on his shoulder. "Strength comes in many forms. Courage, creativity, and the willingness to face fear are as important as size or power. You have these in abundance." Tom felt a quiet confidence building within him. For the first time, he truly believed he could meet the expectations placed upon him. He had survived trials, guided armies, and fought alongside the queen. He had earned the respect of her people. Then she spoke words that made his heart beat faster. "You are my chosen mate, Tom. Not because of prophecy alone, but because I see your value, your strength, and your heart. Will you stand with me not as a stranger but as my partner?" Tom hesitated only for a moment. He looked into her glowing green eyes and saw the trust, the hope, and the courage reflected there. He felt the bond that had grown between them through trials, battle, and shared purpose. "Yes," he said finally, "I will stand with you, Alira. Not because of fate, not because of prophecy, but because I choose to." Alira's smile widened. The city below glimmered, and for a moment the weight of war and responsibility seemed lighter. Together they turned to watch the moons rise, twin lights shining over Kalarian. The coming weeks were filled with rebuilding and preparation. Scouts continued to watch the borders, and Tom helped strategize defenses. His unique perspective as an outsider allowed him to see weaknesses the Kalari had missed. He designed improvements to the shields, trained soldiers in new tactics, and ensured that the city could withstand another attack. But more than machines and plans, he learned to inspire people. Kalari soldiers looked to him not as a human visitor, but as a leader. Children whispered his name with awe, and even the counselors who had doubted him now sought his counsel. Queen Alira noticed this transformation. "You are more than I imagined, Tom," she said one night as they reviewed maps in her chamber. "Not because of prophecy, but because of your choices, your courage, and your mind. You have become a symbol for my people." Tom smiled, feeling a quiet pride. He thought back to Earth, to the small life he had known. How far he had come. "I never thought I would make a difference," he said. "You did not think you acted," Alira replied. "And that is why you succeeded." The bond between them grew stronger. They trained together, planned together, and spoke often about the future of Kalarian. Tom began to understand the weight of leadership, and Alira began to trust him not just as a partner, but as someone who could stand beside her in any trial. Then, one evening, a messenger arrived with urgent news. Scouts had reported that the Vanar were regrouping, planning another attack. This time their force was larger and more organized. The city prepared once more, but Tom and Alira faced it differently. They were no longer just leaders. They were a team, a bond of two worlds combining strategy, courage, and innovation. Tom stood on the balcony, looking at the horizon. "We are ready," he said. Alira stood beside him, her hand brushing his. "We are ready together. Our people will not fall, and neither will we." The Kalari gathered in the city square. Tom addressed them with steady words. He spoke not only as the Queen's chosen mate, but as someone who had walked their path, faced the trials, and earned their trust. He told them of the plans, the strategies, and the importance of unity. The warriors, engineers, and citizens listened with hope, their spirits lifted by his words. When the Vanar finally returned, Kalarian met them with strength and coordination never seen before. Tom guided the machines and formations with precision, while Alira led the front lines with unmatched power. Together, they turned back the enemy once again, using skill, intelligence, and courage rather than sheer force alone. By the end of the battle, the Vanar were driven back beyond the mountains. Kalarian stood unharmed, its people victorious and united. The city celebrated, but Tom and Alira knew that vigilance would always be necessary. Later that night, they walked together through the city. Lights glimmered on the towers, and laughter of the citizens echoed softly. Tom took her hand, feeling the warmth and strength in her grip. "You know," he said quietly, "I never imagined this life. I never imagined a world like this. But I'm glad I am here. I am glad I chose to stand with you." Alira's smile was gentle. "And I am glad you chose, Tom. Prophecy brought you here. But your choice made you mine, and our people's hope is stronger for it." Tom looked out over Kalarian, the glowing towers and the streets alive with life. He thought of Earth, of his past, and of everything he had learned. He knew the future would hold challenges, but he was no longer just a mechanic from another world. He was a protector, a leader, and a partner to a queen whose courage inspired all. Together, they faced the horizon. Two worlds united through courage, trust, and choice. Two hearts bound not by prophecy alone, but by the bond they had forged through trials, battle, and shared purpose. And in that moment, under the light of twin moons, Tom realized that he had found a home, a purpose, and a future he would embrace with all his heart. Kalarian would endure. Its people would thrive. And at the side of their queen, Tom would stand, a human among giants, a symbol of hope for generations to come.